What if everything you've been told about the moon is a lie? When renowned physicist Michio Kaku broke down in tears during his presentation at a major space science symposium in Geneva, the room fell silent. The man who has spent decades explaining the mysteries of the universe to millions was visibly shaken by what he was about to reveal. The data he presented that day didn't just challenge our understanding of the moon, it shattered it completely. Quantum deep imaging satellites, subsurface radar, and gravitational lensing technology had uncovered something so shocking that multiple international agencies verified the findings before Kaku was authorized to speak. What they found beneath the lunar surface defies everything we thought we knew about natural celestial formation. It began in Geneva, at one of the most anticipated gatherings of scientists, astronomers, and futurists from around the globe. The symposium was known for unveiling bold theories and new discoveries, but this year, anticipation carried an unusual weight. When Michio Kaku, the world-renowned theoretical physicist and futurist, walked onto the stage, the room fell into a silence that was more than just respect. It was curiosity mixed with unease. Kaku had built his reputation on being a bridge between hard science and visionary speculation. He could talk about string theory one moment and humanity's future among the stars the next. Audiences expected imagination from him, but they also expected clarity and evidence. Yet that morning in Geneva, his demeanor was different. There was no playful humor in his eyes, no casual warmth in his gestures. Instead, he carried himself with a kind of solemn urgency, as if the information he was about to reveal weighed heavily on his shoulders. The title of his presentation, displayed across a vast screen, read, "The Moon, a Paradigm Shift in Understanding." The words alone stirred murmurs among the crowd. Most had expected the talk to cover well-worn territory, perhaps updates on lunar colonization plans, NASA's Artemis program, or speculative ideas about mining lunar resources. Some even assumed it might be a futuristic pitch about using the moon as a launching base for Mars missions. But Kaku's voice, steady yet unusually subdued, quickly shattered those expectations. He began by reminding the audience of the moon's place in human imagination, how every civilization had looked up at it with reverence, woven it into myths, and used it to mark time. But then he paused, and with a quiet intensity said, "What we thought we knew about the moon is about to change." The room shifted. Scientists who had come prepared to take notes on orbital mechanics or colonization strategies now leaned forward with furrowed brows. This was not going to be another technical update. This was going to challenge the very foundation of how humanity understood its closest celestial neighbor. Kaku explained that the findings he was about to share were not his alone. They were the product of an unprecedented collaboration between space agencies in Europe, Asia, and beyond. These agencies had recently deployed a new generation of satellites equipped with quantum deep imaging systems, gravitational lensing, arrays, and radar capable of penetrating beneath the lunar surface with greater precision than ever before. The data, he said, did not just fill in gaps in our understanding, it tore open the framework entirely. As he spoke, images began to appear. Behind him, high-resolution scans of the moon, patterns and colors highlighting areas that most of the world had never seen. He let the images linger in silence, as though giving the audience time to prepare themselves. Then, with deliberate pacing, he delivered the statement that would ripple far beyond that auditorium. "The moon may not be what we think it is." Gasps and whispers spread through the hall. This was no longer just a presentation, it was a revelation. Kaku, usually so animated in his delivery, stood motionless, his voice steady, his eyes fixed on the audience as though measuring their reactions. It was the beginning of a story that would leave the scientific world and the public at large forever changed. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss any updates on the universe's deepest secrets. And if you love exploring hidden mysteries and unexplained discoveries, give this video a like so we know to keep uncovering them. After his startling introduction, Michio Kaku shifted the audience's attention to the cutting-edge technology that had made these revelations possible. He explained that for decades, the moon had been studied with telescopes, orbiters, and seismic data from the Apollo missions, but all of those tools had provided only a partial picture. The moon, for all its familiarity, remained a mystery. That mystery began to unravel with the deployment of a new generation of instruments, machines so precise that they seemed almost futuristic in their capabilities. These were not the old radar sweeps or grainy photographs. These were quantum deep imaging satellites, able to bend the very fabric of space-time through gravitational lensing to reveal what lay hidden beneath the surface. They were paired with subsurface radar systems capable of probing hundreds of kilometers deep into the lunar crust, mapping structures that had never been seen before. The project was unprecedented in scope. Agencies from Europe, Asia, and smaller spacefaring nations pooled resources, sharing data rather than competing. For the first time, humanity had eyes that could see the moon not as a flat, cratered sphere of dust and rock, but as a layered object with secrets buried far beneath its surface. Kaku described the findings slowly, letting the weight of each word settle over the audience. At first, the data seemed routine: density maps, heat signatures, gravitational fluctuations. But, as the analysis progressed, the results defied every conventional model of lunar formation. The moon's internal density readings were inconsistent, not the gradual, natural layering one would expect from a body formed in a cosmic collision, but sharp disparities, voids where solid rock should have been. Some cavities stretched for hundreds of kilometers, too vast to be dismissed as volcanic tubes or natural hollows. Even more unsettling was their arrangement: symmetrical, repeating, evenly spaced, as though laid out according to a plan. The images on the screen behind Kaku began to change. Grainy radar scans gave way to clean, geometric outlines glowing against the blackness of space. Structures, grids, and what looked like corridors of emptiness threaded through the moon's interior. The auditorium grew tense. Scientists who had dismissed such ideas as fringe speculation now sat frozen, confronted with evidence that could not be ignored. Kaku added another layer. The scans had revealed reflective materials buried deep under the lunar regolith, alloys that gleamed unnaturally in thermal and radar imagery. These were not random deposits of ore. They reflected energy in ways that hinted at engineered surfaces, like panels or casings, preserved under billions of years of dust and impact. He explained that these anomalies weren't isolated. Taken together, the cavities, the geometry, the reflective layers, and the density irregularities painted a picture that no current model of lunar evolution could account for. "This is not the moon we thought we knew," he said gravely. The room was silent, save for the occasional rustle of paper or hurried scribbling of notes. The air seemed charged, as though every person present understood they were witnessing a moment in history. Humanity had stared at the moon for millennia, written poems to it, worshipped it, and studied it. But for the first time, science was beginning to peel back its skin, and what it revealed was something utterly unexpected. As the audience sat in silence, Kaku advanced to the next sequence of findings. This was where the data stopped being unusual and began becoming impossible to dismiss. On the giant screen behind him, scans of the moon's interior revealed a startling truth. The satellite that humanity had always considered a natural companion was not behaving like one at all. The first anomaly was sheer scale. Within the moon's body, researchers had discovered vast internal cavities, hollows stretching hundreds of kilometers in length. Natural explanations such as lava tubes or collapsed voids had been considered, but these cavities were different. They were too vast, too consistent, and they appeared not as chaotic tunnels, but as ordered chambers spread in regular patterns across multiple regions. It was as if someone had hollowed out enormous portions of the moon with deliberate precision. Kaku paused on one image that drew collective gasps. It showed cavities aligned in a near-perfect grid, each separated by similar distances, forming something more like an architectural blueprint than a geological accident. This was not randomness. This was geometry on a planetary scale. The second anomaly deepened the unease. Within these cavities, radar and thermal imaging detected faint reflections that did not belong. Scientists had long understood the lunar regolith, dust and rock billions of years old, was a chaotic mixture of debris from countless impacts. But these reflections suggested the presence of metallic alloys buried far beneath the surface. Alloys arranged not in veins or scattered patches, but in flat, uniform planes. Kaku explained that these reflective signatures resembled the smooth surfaces of engineered structures, plates, casings, or perhaps shells, designed to endure eons of bombardment. Their consistency across multiple regions hinted at a system, a pattern of design. They were not random minerals born of cosmic chance, but evidence of construction. The third anomaly tied everything together. As researchers mapped the cavities and alloys, they noticed that many of the geometric formations intersected cleanly, like beams meeting at right angles or panels overlapping along straight lines. These were shapes foreign to natural geology, but deeply familiar to human eyes. The shapes of design, the signatures of architecture. Behind Kaku, the screen lit up with enhanced images, glowing outlines of honeycomb-like grids, faint but unmistakable. The crowd's silence deepened into something heavier, more electric. The evidence was no longer just statistical irregularities or unexplained signals. It was visual, undeniable. This, Kaku said, pointing to the glowing grid, is not what we expect from nature. These are the hallmarks of design. His deity voice carried a gravity that matched the revelation itself. He did not rush, did not embellish. He simply presented the data and let the images speak for themselves. Some scientists shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others scribbled furiously in their notebooks. A few simply stared at the screen, wide-eyed, unable to look away. The realization was setting in. If these anomalies were real, then the moon was not simply a rock captured by Earth's gravity. It was something else, something engineered, constructed, or at the very least, altered by intelligence far beyond our comprehension. For the first time in human history, the moon was no longer just a celestial neighbor. It was a question mark carved into the night sky, and with every image Kaku revealed, that question grew larger. If the vast cavities and geometric structures suggested that the moon's interior was engineered, what came next hinted at something even more unsettling, that parts of it might still be active. Kaku advanced to the next slide, and a new series of images filled the screen. These were thermal maps of the lunar interior, captured by deep penetrating sensors orbiting high above the surface. At first glance, the moon appeared as one would expect, cold, inert, a lifeless body drifting through space. But scattered across certain regions were faint yet undeniable heat signatures pulsing softly against the backdrop of darkness. These emissions were not random. They were concentrated around the same internal cavities and reflective planes previously identified. They radiated in steady, measured patterns, nothing like the chaotic release of geothermal activity. And most striking of all, their profiles matched something deeply familiar to scientists on Earth. The heat signatures resembled reactor cores, the kind used in nuclear power plants, only on a much grander and older scale. Kaku's voice carried a deliberate calm as he explained the implications. "We are not seeing volcanic remnants," he said. "We are not seeing natural geothermal processes. What we are detecting is energy, contained, regulated, and persisting far longer than any natural source could account for." The data had been cross-verified by multiple agencies, each using independent instruments and calibration methods. There was no doubt about its authenticity. The moon, a body long believed to be geologically dead, was still emitting heat from within. But it was not the heat of magma or tectonic friction. It was the faint, rhythmic glow of something designed to endure. The audience shifted, the weight of the revelation pressing heavily over them. The thought was almost too much to process. Not only might the moon have been engineered, but the systems inside it could still be dormant machines, remnants of a technology that predated human history by billions of years. On the screen, a time-lapse sequence began. Over the course of months of monitoring, the thermal signatures flared and dimmed in quiet cycle, as though the moon itself was breathing. Each pulse radiated outward with uncanny precision, like a beacon that had been running silently since deep time, long before Earth's first civilizations looked up and named it. Kaku let the sequence play out in silence before he spoke again. If these are reactors, or some form of energy generators, then the moon is not simply a relic. It is an artifact, and artifacts are made. The statement landed with a heaviness that words rarely achieve. Some in the room leaned back, as though physically resisting the idea. Others leaned forward, transfixed, unable to break their gaze from the evidence before them. The possibility was staggering. Somewhere deep inside the moon, technology older than humanity might still be functioning, perhaps waiting, perhaps maintaining something unseen. In that moment, the moon was no longer just a silent rock orbiting Earth. It was alive, not with biology, but with energy, with purpose, with a quiet hum that had gone unnoticed until now. As the revelations deepened, Michio Kaku turned to one of the most baffling discoveries of all: the moon's gravity. For decades, lunar missions had puzzled over the so-called mascons, or mass concentrations, strange regions of unexpectedly strong gravity hidden beneath certain craters. They were odd, but never fully explained, and for years many dismissed them as quirks of the moon's violent past. But the new data from quantum gravimetric sensors revealed something no one could have anticipated. When mapped in high resolution, these anomalies did not appear scattered or random. They formed a grid-like pattern, stretching across vast portions of the lunar body, aligning eerily with the cavities and metallic structures already detected. The screen behind Kaku displayed a glowing lattice, lines and nodes repeating with geometric regularity inside the moon. The effect was stunning. The moon's gravitational field was not chaotic, but organized, as though deliberately sculpted. "These are not accidents of geology," Kaku said, his voice steady. "This is engineering. What we are seeing is the fingerprint of a system, an artificial mass distribution network embedded deep within the lunar body." He explained how this grid could function. By concentrating mass in precise locations, the moon's internal architects may have created a stabilizing framework, keeping the satellite locked perfectly in place. The moon, after all, is tidally locked, showing Earth only one face, maintaining a balance that has shaped tides, weather, and even the trajectory of evolution itself. The precision of this arrangement has long puzzled astronomers. Why should a satellite be so perfectly sized, so perfectly placed, so perfectly aligned to produce total solar eclipses and stabilize Earth's wobble? Now, for the first time, there was a possible answer. The grid, Kaku explained, appeared to be a mass-balancing mechanism, distributing gravitational forces with uncanny accuracy. Without it, the moon's orbit might have wobbled, drifted, or destabilized over eons. With it, the moon remained steady, its tidal lock unbroken, its presence acting as a silent governor on Earth's environment. On the screen, a simulation ran, a version of the moon without the grid, its orbit faltering, tides on Earth surging into chaos, the planet's axis lurching unpredictably. Then, with the grid active, the system fell into balance. The moon's orbit smooth and unwavering, Earth's climate stabilized enough to allow life to flourish. A murmur swept through the audience. The implications were staggering. If the grid was real, and the data showed it was. Then, the moon was not just a constructed object. It was a deliberately tuned instrument, a stabilizer placed with surgical precision to guard the fragile conditions of life on Earth. Kaku paused, letting the weight of that thought settle. "We are not merely looking at anomaly," he said quietly. "We may be looking at intention." The auditorium seemed to shrink under the gravity of his words. For the first time in human history, science was entertaining the unthinkable. That Earth's companion in the sky was not only shaped, but placed, engineered to serve a purpose, perhaps to shepherd a young planet toward life. With the gravitational grid displayed behind him, Michio Kaku shifted his focus from the moon itself to its impact on Earth. His words grew softer now, more reflective, as though he wanted the audience to absorb not just the science, but the staggering implications of what it meant. For billions of years, the moon has quietly shaped the destiny of our planet. Its gravitational pull stabilizes Earth's axial tilt, keeping our seasons predictable. Without it, the planet would wobble chaotically, throwing climates into extremes that might have made complex life impossible. The moon drives our tides, the rhythmic pulse that stirs the oceans, cycling nutrients, guiding migrations, and perhaps even sparking the conditions that allowed life to move from sea to land. Kaku reminded the audience that Earth's evolutionary path was inseparable from these lunar influences. The gentle tug of the moon choreographed the rise of ecosystems, balanced the rhythm of days and nights, and even influenced human biology through circadian cycles. Without the moon, he said, Earth as we know it, our climate, our oceans, our very existence, would not be the same. But then he leaned in, his tone sharpening with urgency. What if this was not an accident? What if the perfect balance of forces, the tidal lock, the exact size of the moon relative to the sun that allows for total solar eclipses, the uncanny synchronicity of orbits, was not coincidence at all? What if it was arrangement? Behind him, simulations illustrated the precision. Earth's tilt held steady like a gyroscope under the moon's influence. Tides ebbed and flowed with delicate regularity. And then, the most haunting alignment of all. From Earth's perspective, the moon and the sun appeared to be the exact same size, allowing the spectacle of total solar eclipses, a phenomenon unique in our solar system. The odds of this occurring naturally, Kaku explained, were astronomically small. These alignments, he said slowly, are not just useful, they are elegant, they are intentional. A silence swept over the auditorium. The suggestion hung in the air, heavier than any number or graph. If the moon was deliberately placed, then Earth itself had been prepared, its evolution nudged, its conditions maintained. Humanity was not simply the product of chance cosmic collisions, but perhaps of a design so vast and ancient that it spanned planets and epochs. For a moment, Kaku did not speak. He let the thought settle, the enormity of it vibrating in the silence of the hall. Then he concluded, his voice almost reverent. If the moon was placed to stabilize Earth, then our planet's story, our story, has been guided. We are not just children of chance. We may be living within a framework shaped long before us, by hands we do not yet understand. The auditorium seemed frozen in time. For the first time, the moon was no longer just a backdrop to Earth's story. It was part of the script itself, a silent partner in the rise of life. As the hall absorbed the implications of the moon's role in shaping Earth's destiny, Michio Kaku shifted to a subject that bridged science with something far older, human memory. He reminded the audience that long before satellites, computers, or telescopes, our ancestors looked to the sky and recorded what they saw. And among those records lay stories that, until now, had been dismissed as myth. Kaku displayed a timeline across the screen, not of science, but of human culture. Ancient civilizations, from the Sumerians of Mesopotamia to the Mayans of Mesoamerica and the dynasties of Egypt, had all told tales of a time before the moon existed in the sky. Some traditions spoke of a second sun that vanished when the moon appeared. Others described gods who brought the moon and set it above the world. The Sumerians, among the first astronomers of history, referred to the moon as if it were a newcomer, a celestial body introduced, not eternal. The Mayans told stories of heavenly battles, where the moon was carried into place by divine being. In Egypt, inscriptions hinted at cosmic upheavals, with the moon's arrival marking the beginning of ordered time. For centuries, scholars had interpreted these accounts as metaphor, myth-making, or primitive attempts to explain natural phenomena. But now, in the light of the anomalies uncovered, Kaku urged the audience to reconsider. What if these stories were not symbolic? What if they were cultural memories passed down across generations, echoing an event humanity once witnessed but could not fully understand? He displayed a translation of a fragmentary Sumerian text. There was a time when the moon was not in the heavens. Another from the highlands of South America spoke of the moon arriving suddenly, bringing chaos and then order. These were not isolated tales, but recurring motifs from civilizations continents apart, all whispering of the same impossible thing, that the moon was not always there. Kaku let the words linger, then connected them back to the data. If the moon was placed, he said, then humanity may have recorded it, not in equations or measurements, but in myths, in stories, in fragments of memory. The audience sat spellbound. Suddenly, the old legends were no longer quaint, relics of superstition. They were clues, pieces of testimony left by ancestors who saw the heavens shift. What had once been dismissed as myth might, in fact, be history misremembered. Behind Kaku, the screen faded to an image of the full moon rising over ancient ruin, timeless, eternal, yet now questioned. The moon, so familiar in every culture's calendar, festival, and ritual, might have been an arrival, not a constant. Humanity's oldest stories could be the only surviving record of its placement. The realization was as disquieting as it was profound, that our ancestors may have watched, in awe and terror, as the sky itself was altered, and we, their descendants, had mistaken their warnings for poetry. Michio Kaku dimmed the lights in the auditorium. On the massive screen behind him appeared a slow rotating image of the moon, its surface etched with craters, serene and silent. But what he was about to describe suggested that silence was an illusion. He began with the Apollo seismic experiments. When astronauts placed seismometers on the lunar surface, they expected short, abrupt tremors, like earthquakes. But what they found was unlike anything on Earth. When lunar modules were deliberately crashed onto the surface to test seismic response, the moon rang, not for seconds, but for nearly an hour. The vibrations echoed through its body as if the entire structure was reverberating like a struck bell. Scientists at the time noted the anomaly, but without context, it was brushed aside. Now, with data from new subsurface scans revealing vast cavities and internal lattices, the mystery had new meaning. The moon did not behave like a solid rock. It behaved like something engineered to resonate. The image shifted on the screen to another enigma, bright, transient lunar flashes captured by telescopes for centuries. Brief bursts of light appearing, without warning, across the surface. They were unpredictable, sometimes lasting seconds, other times minutes. For generations, astronomers speculated, perhaps gas escaping, perhaps meteor impacts. But the new monitoring systems told a different story. These lights often repeated in the same places, like signals or sparks of dormant machinery, activating for reasons unknown. Then came the final piece: metallic anomalies detected beneath the lunar surface, high-frequency radar, and advanced spectrographic. Scans revealed regions that reflected signals too strongly to be natural. Layers and sheets of alloys, complex composites not normally found in nature, seemed to line the cavities, reinforcing them like ribs in a great machine. These weren't scattered traces of nickel or iron. They were structured, deliberate, placed, as though to strengthen an interior framework. Kaku's voice grew low, almost a whisper, as the data scrolled across the screen. One anomaly can be dismissed, a second explained away, but taken together, resonant quakes that suggest hollowness, flashes of light that behave like energy discharges, alloys that should not exist in such arrangements. Piece by piece, the evidence points in the same direction. He paused, letting the words sink into the hushed room. This is not geology. This is engineering. The auditorium was still, filled with the quiet weight of revelation. The moon, the eternal companion of humanity, the subject of poetry, calendars, and tides, now appeared as something else entirely, an artifact, possibly the greatest artifact in human history. Kaku looked out over the audience, his expression grave. And if it is an artifact, he concluded, then we must ask, who built it? And why was it placed here, watching over Earth for billions of years? On the screen, the moon hung in silence, no longer a passive rock in space, but a riddle, echoing with the faint vibrations of secrets buried deep within. When Michio Kaku concluded his presentation, the silence in the auditorium was unlike any pause that usually follows a scientific talk. It was not the silence of curiosity or polite contemplation. It was the silence of disruption, the moment when established. Truths begin to fracture. Within weeks, the ripples of his findings spread across the scientific community. Disciplines that had rarely intersected were suddenly converging, pulled into the orbit of one question: what is the moon? Astrophysicists began revisiting long-accepted models of lunar formation, the giant impact hypothesis, the theories of co-accretion, capture, and collision. None fully explained the moon's peculiarity, its size, its orbit, its tidal lock, its perfect eclipse alignment. Now, with evidence of cavities, metals, and heat signatures, physicists were forced to consider what had once been unthinkable: artificial placement. Evolutionary biologists, too, were drawn into the conversation. For decades, they had acknowledged the moon's influence on tides, climates, and cycles of life. But now, they revisited the question with a new lens. If the moon was deliberately positioned, then Earth's evolutionary trajectory, the rise of oceans, the emergence of land creatures, even the rhythms of human biology, might not be the product of chance, but the outcome of cosmic intention. Life had not simply adapted to the moon. It may have been designed to flourish under it. Then came a new, interdisciplinary frontier: astroarchaeology. A field once dismissed as fringe began to gain legitimacy. Its purpose, to treat the moon not as a satellite to be mined or colonized, but as a relic to be studied. If it was constructed, then somewhere within its cavities might lie archives, structures, or even technologies left behind. Not a dead rock, but a time capsule, perhaps even a message. International agencies began to shift their priorities. Proposals for traditional lunar mining missions or colonization bases were suddenly revised. Instead, new plans emerged for deep penetration, probes, subsurface radar mapping, and archaeology-driven excavation. Engineers began designing instruments not just to drill for resources, but to search for chambers, alloys, or machinery beneath the regolith. The moon was no longer merely a stepping stone to Mars. It was a destination in its own right, a mystery demanding excavation. Outside of science, the cultural shock was equally profound. Religions, philosophers, and historians grappled with the idea that humanity's oldest myths, tales of gods bringing the moon, stories of a sky once bare, might not be imagination, but distorted memory. The line between faith, history, and science blurred. Was the moon a sentinel placed to watch over Earth? Was it an archive holding the records of a civilization older than humanity itself? Or was it something far greater, a node in a galactic network, part of a vast project of life seeding across the stars? Kaku himself offered no definitive answer, only possibilities. We must approach with humility, he said. The moon may be more than an object of study. It may be a teacher, it may be a mirror, or it may be a warning. And so, for the first time in modern history, humanity stood at the threshold of a new kind of exploration. Not conquest, not exploitation, but archaeology on a planetary scale. The moon had become not only the nearest world, but the oldest riddle, one that could redefine not just our science, but our very understanding of life's place in the cosmos. The screen behind Kaku faded to black, leaving only the glowing crescent of the moon. It no longer looked like a cold stone. It looked like an artifact waiting to be read. As the symposium drew to a close, the lights dimmed once more. Michio Kaku stepped forward, his voice measured, steady, not sensational, not theatrical, but carrying the gravity of a man who understood the scale of what was at stake. He began by acknowledging the danger of misinterpretation. In times like these, he said, it is easy for the imagination to outrun the evidence, easy to leap to conclusions of alien civilizations, to craft grand conspiracies, or to turn science into spectacle. But we must not allow awe to overwhelm responsibility. The moon loomed on the screen behind him, glowing softly against the darkened hall. Kaku urged his colleagues, and by extension humanity, to approach the findings with humility. If the moon truly bore signs of intelligent design, it was not ours to exploit recklessly. It was not a quarry to be gutted for minerals, nor a staging post to be claimed in some new frontier race. It was something older, something perhaps sacred, a guardian that had shaped Earth's tides, climates, and rhythms of life itself. Consider this, he said, his tone slowing to let the thought sink in. If the moon is an artifact, then, for billions of years, it has stood as a silent sentinel. It has guided Earth's axis, stabilized our orbit, and shielded us from cosmic chaos. It has been both protector and companion. To treat it as mere rock is to misunderstand its role in our very existence. He paused, the auditorium silent, the weight of his words pressing on every listener. Then came the warning. If we rush forward, drilling, mining, tearing into its depths, without understanding what it is, we risk more than scientific folly. We risk desecration. We risk silencing something we were meant to learn from, perhaps even something still active. Kaku framed the moon not as an alien machine to be feared, nor as a miracle to be worshipped, but as a message of continuity, a bridge between Earth and the cosmos, between humanity and whatever intelligence may have come before. He urged cooperation, not competition, global unity, not division, a scientific approach tempered with respect. The moon may not belong to us alone, he concluded, his voice almost solemn. It may belong to history itself, to the story of life, written on a scale we are only beginning to grasp. And if that is true, then our duty is not to conquer it, but to listen to it, to learn from it, to preserve it, as we would preserve the oldest library or the last seed of life on Earth. On the final slide, the full moon rose slowly over the Earth's horizon, captured by Apollo astronauts decades ago. But in this moment, it no longer looked like the cold stone of old assumptions. It looked alive with meaning, a guardian, a relic, an artifact of staggering significance. The lights rose, but the audience did not applaud immediately. There was no roar of excitement, no celebratory cheer, only quiet reflection. For the first time, humanity was being asked to see the moon not as a destination, but as a question written in the sky, waiting patiently for us to be ready to understand it. The symposium ended, but its echoes traveled far beyond Geneva. News outlets replayed Kaku's words, scientists convened in emergency forums, and the public looked skyward with new eyes. The moon, once a familiar companion, now carried an unsettling question. What is it really? Across cultures and generations, the moon had always been more than stone. It was woven into calendars, myths, and dreams. It was the light in the night sky that inspired poets, guided sailors, and marked the passage of time itself. But now, that comfort had shifted. Each crater seemed like a scar hiding secrets, each glow a veil covering something we were not yet ready to face. Kaku's final words lingered in the collective imagination. The moon may not be a place to conquer, but a message to understand. Humanity was being challenged, not with rockets or weapons, but with humility. To dig recklessly might mean losing what was meant to guide us. To pause, to listen, to question, might be the only path forward. And so the moon hung there, silent as ever, suspended in the dark. Perhaps it is a sentinel, perhaps a vault, perhaps a relic of ancient hands that shaped the stage upon which life would unfold. Whatever it is, it waits, it watches, and as long as it shines upon Earth, the question remains, was the moon placed there for us to survive, or for us to discover? The screen fades to black. The final words appear. The moon, a paradigm shift in understanding. If you found this journey through hidden science, cosmic secrets, and potential alien infrastructure as mind-blowing as we did, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Don't miss future explorations into the universe's deepest mysteries, because some secrets are just waiting to be uncovered.